I know how seriously she takes it all. But she does have a wonderful way with people, you see. That's the special thing, I think.
King Charles has just made a decision about Queen Camilla that will quietly shape the rest of her life, and almost no one noticed the moment it happened. It played out far from any palace, on a naval base at Devonport, one day before her 78th birthday. No crowds, no headlines, just a quiet ceremony, and a single act that hands his wife something no woman in history had ever been given. On the surface, it looks like a small formality. Underneath, it settles a question that has shadowed Camilla for 50 years.
I was scrutinized for such a long time that you just have to find a way to live with it. Nobody likes to be looked at all the time and, criticized.
And the answer is not the one you would expect. The decision no king had ever made. Stand where she stood for a second. The salt air coming off the Plymouth water, gray ships sitting low in the distance, ranks of naval officers in dress uniform, spines straight, eyes forward. And in the middle of all of it, a woman most of Britain once wanted nowhere near the crown at all. No cameras jostling, no headline booming over it, just a hush and the sea and a decision. And there, in that hush, Charles appoints her Vice Admiral of the United Kingdom, the first woman ever, in the whole history of the title, to hold it. Here is what almost no one noticed, and it is the whole key to this story. This is not a medal, it is an honorary title, yes, but a serious one, because it can only be granted by the sovereign himself, on the nomination of the most senior officer in the entire Royal Navy. It had existed for centuries. It had passed through the hands of men, and only men, for all of that time. And Charles handed it to his wife the day before she turned 78. Think about that for a second. Really sit with it. Nobody forced this. No rule demanded it. No tradition required it. And not one advisor in that whole building could have made him do it if he had not wanted to. He chose it, entirely alone. He reached deliberately into one of the very oldest institutions the monarchy touches, an institution stitched right into the very identity of the crown itself, and he put Camilla inside it, permanently. The Navy welcomed her, with senior officers calling it a boost to morale and a reflection of the regard she is held in across the service. And you have to understand what a man is really saying when he does something like that. He is not talking about today. He is not talking about the ceremony. He is talking about the years ahead, the ones he will not be here to see. He is drawing a line around his wife, in ink, that no one who comes after him can easily rub out. And here is the thing you cannot forget. For most of Camilla's life, her future was never hers. It was something other people argued over, negotiated down, quietly tried to shrink. In that small, plain room at Devonport, without raising his voice, the king ended the argument for good. Now, if you want to see how far that woman had to climb to reach that room, stay with me, because the most revealing part of this story is not the honor. It is what the honor was quietly covering up. Subscribe before we go on, because what comes next is the part almost everyone gets wrong. The woman Britain refused to accept. You cannot measure how far Camilla's future traveled without remembering where it started, and where it started was ugly. For years, to much of the public, she was simply the other woman, the figure at the center of the collapse of Charles's marriage to Diana. When the plans for Charles and Camilla to marry became public, some of Diana's supporters wrote to the national newspapers to condemn it. And it went further than letters. Camilla received hate mail so serious that it had to be passed to the police. Sit with that? Not criticism, not bad press. Threats handed to officers. In the eyes of a huge part of the country, she was not a future queen at all. She was something in the way. So, how does a woman climb out of that? Not with one grand gesture, with patience and with work almost no one was watching. Camilla spent decades quietly building a record of her own. She began campaigning to raise awareness of osteoporosis back in 1994, long before anyone was ready to give her credit for anything. Then rape and sexual abuse. Then illiteracy, animal welfare, poverty. She turned up year after year to causes that offered no glamour and no easy applause, and she did it without demanding the country forgive her on any particular timetable. And slowly, something shifted. The other woman became a working member of the family. Then something, closer to a fixture, then something the public simply stopped questioning. But here is what that long, patient climb was really building toward, and it is not the thing you would expect. The title that changed the meaning. Because there was still one person whose word could settle Camilla's future in a single sentence, and it was not Charles. For years, even inside the family, it was widely expected that Camilla would one day be known only as Princess Consort, a softened title, a deliberate step down, designed to spare the country's feelings. Her future was being quietly capped before she ever reached it. And then, in 2022, only months before her death, Queen Elizabeth II put out a statement of her own. It was her sincere wish, she said, that when the time came, Camilla should be known as Queen Consort. One sentence from the one woman no one could argue with, and years of speculation simply ended. When Charles became king in September 2022, Camilla became Queen Consort. At the coronation at Westminster Abbey in May 2023, she was crowned beside him. And then Charles did something that looked tiny and was not. He dropped the word consort, not Queen Consort, just Queen Camilla. Now, historians point out that in strict constitutional terms, nothing about her actual power changed. She does not rule, her role stays ceremonial. But do not let that fool you into thinking the choice meant nothing. By making her Queen Camilla, plainly and without qualification, Charles was reinforcing an old and stubborn idea that the wife of a king is always a queen, with no asterisk attached. For a woman whose title had spent decades being debated and hedged, cutting that one word away was its own kind of announcement. And it raises a question the king must have known was coming next. If he was willing to go that far in words, how far was he willing to go in power? The quiet expansion. Here is where it gets interesting, because once you know what to look for, the pattern is impossible to unsee. Across the years of Charles's reign, Camilla's role has not shrunk, and it has not stood still. It has grown, step by careful step. As the king's wife, she serves as a counselor of state, one of the small handful of senior royals who can temporarily carry out certain official duties for the sovereign when he is ill or abroad, signing routine documents, attending the Privy Council. Then it went wider. On a visit to Canada in May 2025, she was sworn into the King's Privy Council for Canada, extending her formal standing beyond Britain entirely. In March 2026, she became the first female member of the Garrett Club, breaking a barrier that had stood for generations. And for 4 years straight, from 2023 through 2026, she has appeared on the Independent's list of the most influential women in the country, earned entirely through her own work. Then came the test that mattered more than any title. After Charles was diagnosed with cancer, it was Camilla who stepped forward as the steady figure at his side, carrying a share of the public weight that no one else in the family could carry in quite the same way. She was a central presence at Trooping the Colour in 2026. She stood beside him at the state opening of Parliament in May 2026, in the House of Lords. She went out alone when the Crown needed representing, and he could not be there. Royal watchers noted that her role seemed to be entering a new phase, one where she would ease off the duties younger royals could handle while remaining, in every account, a powerful and central force. So, the Devonport honor was never a one-off. It was the visible peak of a long, deliberate campaign to make Camilla's place permanent. Every appointment, every barrier broken, every honor pointed the same way. Which makes the next fact almost impossible to believe, because for all of it, there is one thing this king has spent his reign carefully not giving her. The ceiling. No honor can lift. And this is the part the celebration keeps quiet. Beneath every title Charles has handed his wife sits a limit that no title he could ever grant will lift. Camilla is a queen, but she is not a queen regnant. Say it plainly, because it changes everything. She does not rule in her own right the way Queen Elizabeth II did. She is royal by marriage, not by birth, which means her rank, her title, her standing, all of it, is tied to Charles and to Charles alone. Historians note that a title like hers does not simply describe her. It shifts depending on who is wearing the crown at the time. So follow that line to where it ends. She will not succeed him. When Charles's reign is over, the throne does not pass to his wife. It passes to his heir, Prince William, first in the line of succession. And if a regency were ever needed while Charles still lived, it would be William named regent, not Camilla, because that duty follows the succession, and she is not in it. The moment his reign ends, Camilla stops being an active queen and becomes a queen dowager, the widow of a former king. Her title, historians note, is not guaranteed to her for life the way a born royals would be. Now, put the two halves together. Charles has lifted his wife as high as a king can possibly lift a consort. Honors no woman held before her. Trust no one in her position had been given. And at the very same time, he has left untouched the one thing the crown keeps only for the line of succession. So, which did he really mean to tell the country, the elevation or the limit? The answer is stranger than either. What her future actually holds. Strip away all the noise and ask the only question that matters. What has King Charles actually decided about Queen Camilla's future? Not a downfall, not a reversal, something quieter, and in its own way far more final. He has settled the question that shadowed her for 50 years. Her future, for as long as he reigns, is secure. It is high. It is honored in ways the record books had never seen before her. The woman who once had hate mail handed to police now holds a title no woman ever held, sits on a privy council across an ocean, walks into rooms that had never admitted a royal woman, and stands beside the king at the opening of Parliament. 4 years running, named among the most influential women in the country on her own merit. Within his reign, her place cannot be touched, and her future is also bounded, hemmed in by the very rules that give it meaning. She rises as high as a king's wife can rise, and not 1 inch higher. The honors are real. The ceiling is real. Charles made both of them permanent in the same breath, holding his wife as close to the center of the crown as the rules allow, while never once mistaking her elevation for succession. That is the real announcement, sitting underneath all the others. Not that Camilla was raised up overnight, and not that she was cast aside, but that her future was finally, deliberately, completely decided. She is Queen Camilla, whole and unqualified, for as long as Charles reigns. And when that reign ends, her chapter closes with his, and William's begins. The king has made his peace with that arithmetic, and in doing it, he handed the woman they called the other woman, the one thing she was denied for a lifetime: certainty. So, here is my question for you, and I want you to actually answer it below. Will history remember Camilla as one of the most transformed figures the modern monarchy has ever seen? Or will the old doubts follow her right to the end? Tell me in the comments. And if this pulled back a curtain the headlines never bothered to, subscribe, because the next story is one they are getting wrong too. I will see you there.